Yeah.
Very few people who went through what I went through probably would have stuck with it. And I just didn't have the high enough perspective at the time to know that it's all about plan A, B, and C. Yes, plan A can be to get cash flow, but if your plan B to sell doesn't work or leaves you in a cash negative position, now you got to reconsider that investment. I'm really glad that I was able to get back in. I'm glad that I was able to surround myself with people that had overcome hardship and made it to really incredible places, because if they can do it, I can do it. And I've lived by that. Anytime in any business, if somebody else can do it, I can find a way to do it too.
Problems are what? Problems are profits!
Welcome to another episode of the Problems or Profits podcast. My name is Rebecca Lynn Matheson, and we've got a special guest here, Andrew Hines, who graduated with an HBA from the Richard Ivey School of Business. He is an incredible podcast host and real estate investor himself. So before we get into the interview with Andrew, just going to go over what Problems or Profits means to me. And for me, it really means taking on challenges, being agile, and striving towards success, regardless of the obstacles that really come in your way. So welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get into it, I have a few warm-up questions here for you just to get the ball rolling. So first question here is, what is the most expensive thing that you've ever broken?
Broken? Oh, that's a good question. Well, I guess there was a close call. I used to work in an electric motor factory or a repair shop, and I dented like they hand braid these copper coils all through the interior of the motor, and this guy had worked on it for months, coiling it up, and then I knocked housing into it. And if you sever even one strand, they have to redo the whole thing. It didn't sever it.
Oh no!
But it was like a moment of sheer terror in my my life, because I would have guaranteed been fired if that had been the case.
Absolutely. Well, that leads into our next question quite well. So if you had $1 million in only 24 hours, given that you hadn't fully broken that cord, what would you do with that $1 million now? And basically, how would you allocate or spend it if it disappeared after 24 hours?
Oh, you're saying so I can't invest it? It's just gone?
It's gone.
So I have to so I can't buy something. I have to use it up in like a service or experience.
You could definitely buy something if you chose to. Just it disappears after 24 hours. So you got to spend it all in that time frame. I
mean, obviously I'm going to buy stuff that that'll pay me cash flow typically, which would be investing. Otherwise, gonna buy a yacht or something and go sailing. Not sailing, go for a boat ride.
Absolutely. Where would you go if you were to go on a yacht? What kind of waterway?
Just some inland waterways down south, and go into the Gulf of Mexico and see where I go.
That's awesome. Next question here is, why are you you?
Why am I me? That's a really tough question to answer. Because God made me this way, I guess.
Yep. Is there anything that like distinctly makes you uniquely you?
I mean, I think I have my own attributes that are like unique, I guess, in this space, especially. I don't know. I just call things like I see it. And, I say things that might offend some, but you know what? I think that it does a disservice to not, to be anything but real with people, especially in this investing business. So I think from an investor standpoint and from a real estate educator, I kind of have that reputation of just being an OBS, because I'm not selling anything. And I think that kind of helps, I guess, in some sense. Not that there's any problem with that, but I guess that's part of it.
Absolutely. Now, final warm-up question here is, what have you created that you are the most proud of?
Well, my wife and I, we got married in 2019, and I guess I'm more proud of her because she did all the questions or all the work. But our wedding, like everything that happened there was really cool. Made some international publication, so that was really cool. But I mean, in terms of like really proud, I mean, I'm certainly really proud of some of the real estate projects, student rentals that I've built / rebuilt, and just when I get to see that at the end of the day, it's really fun to know that I created it and it's profitable, and it was fun to get there.
Incredible. Well, definitely appreciate that. And I'm sure your wife will appreciate that too.
Yeah, that was all her.
Yeah. Well,
Just
I'd
wrote
love
the
to.
check.
There you go. I'd love to start the podcast off just with a brief rundown of your story. Oftentimes, you are the podcast host, so I'd really like to understand a little bit more about your story and really what got you to the point that you're at today.
Sure. Okay, so 2000, say, I don't know, 2005, somewhere around there, I was at Western, kind of just in my early years. And I had friends living in some townhouses outside the gates. And I saw that they were paying $500 a bedroom, and there were 80 bedrooms across 4 townhouses right on this corner. So when I saw that, I was running rough numbers. I figured, wow, this guy must be making, $150,000 even after tax, which is like double what my dad was, bringing in as a teacher. And I'm just like, wow, people have been doing this all wrong. Like, I want to do this. I want to own these. And I didn't know how to get there, but within, I graduated 2008. I taught for a couple of years, and then I started investing in real estate in 2011. And then I finally started investing in student rentals in 2015, which was really what felt most natural to me because I lived in them. I knew what I liked, what I didn't like. And to me, it felt like the safest real estate investment ever. But I had some real hard times between 2011 and 2013, 14. I invested in the US. I invested in a potential development, and everything fell flat. I lost a whole bunch of money in Youngstown, Ohio. And my development attempt, I made the front page of the London Free Press as the big bad Toronto developer that wanted to destroy the community. And the brakes got thrown on there. And so I was kind of like the hard knocks investor to get started in my 20s, and kind of started to learn my lessons towards my late 20s and figure it out. And so, as far as student rentals go, I got into, I wanted to keep them, but I did end up selling many. I did end up burring many. So I kind of, that became my MO to burr a student rental and, do the ensuite bathrooms. So 5-bed, 5.5 bath, really nice AAA product that I would have wanted to live in when I was in school, because I lived in, the junkiest of junky places, because I was paying for it myself. So I'm like, I don't want to attract, me. I want to attract the kids that their parents write the check and they just want a really nice place. And that's the product I've always aimed to provide. So that was kind of how I got into it. Then I've gone into new construction because I was building additions on my houses. So I've been hired to build, I think I'm in the ballpark of 50 units and houses at this point over the last several years, and now into the US for the second time.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned the US and investing. What attracted you to investing down in the US versus Canada?
Couple of things. One, it's a political hedge. So if I don't like what's happening here, the politics here, it gives me some flexibility. So I am also pursuing an investor visa, which would allow me the flexibility to choose to either be a tax resident in Canada or the US. So if things were to worsen here, with the lockdown, if things don't come back, then I have that flexibility. I can just relocate. And then the second is the numbers just make sense there. In a lot of US cities, it's not specific to Florida where I'm looking at, but there's tons of places you could go that make a lot of sense. To me, Florida makes a ton of sense because of the in-migration to that state. And then I can still get, I'm buying lots right now around 25 grand, looking at building and being all in with a pool for around 300 grand and having that worth 400 grand. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And you don't hear those kind of numbers here. And, on that product, the market rent rate is going to be between 2,500 and 3,000. So effectively to me, it's almost 1% rule. So those numbers make sense. Ontario doesn't make sense to me right now. And I like you guys are all problems or profits. I saw, the numbers in Ontario for me as a cash flow investor, a problem. And I just find a way to make that profit.
Absolutely. Now, in the pathway forward and investing in the US, how have you been building those relationships out? Obviously being so far away, how have you been able to just really bridge that gap?
So I was in Florida until yesterday. I was in Florida for just over 3 months, and I was going to twice a month real estate investor meetups. So they're doing in-person meetups there. So we're shaking hands, talking real estate and exchanging business cards. So I found various different people doing various different things. And it was the second last meetup I went to where one guy just came up and he gave his pitch from the front of the room and said, he builds new construction houses. We split the profit 50-50. I'm like, there's my my way in, because I know construction. I've done that in Ontario for many years. And I figured that's going to be my angle, my best value add, because I'm not afraid of that business. And, sure enough, so we're going to joint venture. That the gentleman that was speaking from the front of the room, we're going to joint venture on one. And then I've just shaken hands with him. He's tied up 4 more lots for me, and I've just sent him a deposit for those. So I just have to get my corporate structure set up, and I'll be closing them in my my new company.
There we go. Just absolutely pumping forward regardless of the setup there. And I liked the analogy there to turn the problem that you were experiencing into a profit, just in a totally different area and in a totally different market as well. Did you do any pre-due diligence, I guess, on the Florida market, and what really attracted you to that space?
Well, I really like the politics there. I've, as far as their governor, I mean, I could only wish that we had, Ron DeSantis running Ontario right now. Just the way that he stood up for the people down there, and everyone's taken notice. Like, there's so many people leaving all kinds of states to go to Florida right now. So it's normal life there, which is crazy. It's like you've entered a parallel universe. And, you can shop without a mask on, you can go to investor meetups, you can do whatever you want, like nothing's closed, not even a little bit. So that was a big attractor, but no one's ever going to take away the sun, or, we hope not. The sun's going to be there, the water's going to be there. There's certain things about Florida that are going to make it always an ideal place to go to, even if it's a seasonal place. So I don't totally love that. I don't love the seasonality of it. But what I see now is so many people are going there and actually staying there year round. But I've been going down to that area of Florida for the last, say, 7 years because my mother-in-law has the place there. So we would always spend time in North Naples. And of course, we love it down there. It's beautiful weather. And the price range isn't as good in Naples as it is if you go a little bit north into Fort Myers, Cape Coral area, which is why I've been looking at Cape Coral, because you can still find stuff, finished houses in the 300s, which, sounds like London, Ontario, a few years ago. So just the numbers just make a lot more sense at surface level.
Gotcha. Yeah. And given that you started kind of in that London market, as you evolve in your business, it's easy to look back and see certain challenges that you faced or certain problems just as less significant. So are there any moments when you reflect back that seemed like a huge deal in the moment that now it's a no-brainer in terms of the way that you move forward in your business or in the way that you operate?
So things that I used to think were a big deal and don't anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to think renovations were a big deal. I mean, once you do things like that, you don't think it's a big deal anymore. Having employees, that used to be like rocket science in my head, trying to figure out how I would ever do that. You hire the right person and they do your books and, submit your forms and all that stuff. And that's all fine. You can make that work. Things like banking and just all these day-to-day things that go into running a business. As I've done them, I've learned. And, you said I push forward in Florida, even though I don't have it set up, I know I will get it. I've done this before. And sometimes you just got to move, when you feel the time is right. And for me, I've spent my time really doing my due diligence, but now I feel it's time to move. So I think everything is long story short, everything before you've tried it seems a little daunting. But if you got a good gut feel, and that's how I try to operate, I really do try, to trust my gut. If my gut's saying yes, if my initial instinct was yes, then probably 95% of the time I'm going with that.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of splitting up your time, you mentioned obviously evolving your business to having employees, to really diversifying in different markets and just going where the numbers actually make sense. For you, how do you allocate most of your time now? Like, are you focused in your business on just finding new ventures? Are you focused in your business on actually being the active partner? What actually do you spend the most time on now in those operations?
My main thing now is sourcing deals, sourcing new opportunity. Of course, I am still involved in the operation of my construction company. So right now I'm building, I'm involved in building 126 custom homes in the Sarnia area. That's my company. So I do have very, very good people on the ground, and the day-to-day operations are pretty well entirely taken care of. So as I grow more, I will be looking to get more people at an administrative capacity. But it's, it's really important to me to find people that, they're passionate about this industry. They want to be in this business and learn and grow kind of together. So that will be the next step, so that I'm not spending quite as much time on the operational side, because I still do have that. But yeah, I am looking as I go forward to, I've been the builder always, right? So I don't mind hiring another builder company, but I've just got to make sure that I can call BS if I need to call BS if I'm not content with the job or the numbers. But so far, everything I've seen, down in Florida, in these build situations, hiring a builder, the numbers still make sense. They'll give a firm price. This is what we'll build. We've already built this model, 10 times. We can build it for you, and this is the price. I really like that. I'm a big fan of that. So, I'm trying my best to not be such a control freak, because I always have been. I've always wanted to be in complete control. Pretty well ever since I got burned in Ohio. I've been, overcompensated far to the other side.
Absolutely. Now, do you mind actually diving a little bit deeper into that Ohio situation and kind of exploring what challenges you faced with that?
So I invested in a $12,500 duplex in Youngstown, Ohio. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I do that? That's really cheap. It is like
Right.
a 2,000 square foot at the end of a dead end street overlooking a river. I'm like, this is too good to be true, which is exactly the truth. It was. And it's not that I couldn't have made a profit there or done really well there. It's just that I trusted the wrong people. And I had that weird gut feeling before I did it. I had that weird gut feeling before I did it that I wasn't quite sure. I was trying to sell myself on it. And I'm like, well, what if this happens? And a friend of mine / client was also investing there at the same time. And I was asking him questions. And the answers he gave back to me, they didn't make me feel that comfortable. So ultimately, I should have trusted my gut and not done it. So I ended up buying them. I bought one $12,500 duplex that needed like probably $5,000 of work, but it ended up stretching into 10. And when I gave the money, the property manager actually didn't use it to renovate. He just took it and he started living off of it. And then he rented the property out to a guy who said he would finish the work as the tenant. He would just, finish the work. And, I was too junior in this business to realize that that's a headache and a catastrophe waiting to happen. So I allowed that to happen. I ended up being all into that house for almost $30,000 Canadian. But at that point, I ended up having to give it away because he allowed the house to be destroyed. So the water pipes got busted and flooded the house, and the whole house filled with humidity and mold, and the fan blades were wooden fan blades and they were bent from all the moisture in the air. They just started sagging. And it was going to cost so much more than the house was even worth to remediate it. I was afraid I was actually going to have to tear the house down at my own expense and give it back to the city. So
Oh, wow.
I ended up giving it to the property manager that caused all the problems. He was willing to take it after he destroyed it. So that was actually a relief just to be out of that. And then the other one I bought did okay. But the thing you have to realize about Youngstown is you're probably going to lose money. You're going to get no appreciation. So when you pay the closing costs when you sell, you're actually going to lose money. So you have to make it on the cash flow. It's a purely cash flow town. And I just didn't have the high enough perspective at the time to know that it's all about plan A, B, and C. Yes, plan A can be to get cash flow, but if your plan B to sell doesn't work or leaves you in a cash negative position, now you got to reconsider that investment. So I started applying that plan A, B, and C model after Youngstown. That was my big takeaway. And like I said, I overcompensated. I was a little maybe too conservative. I was careful, but I also was pretty aggressive in getting those, student rental burrs going. And anyways, yeah, so I've learned a lot from that. I've learned that people need to earn trust. You can't just give trust. You can't just say somebody should be trusted. But I also learned to examine what's someone's reputation. What do they have to lose by doing bad business with me? And I take that really into account now when I look at somebody. So I like to find people to deal with out of a community. That's another thing I've learned. So real estate investor meetups are critical to me. I want to work with a contractor that's very tight with that community, because they have the most to lose if they act poorly. And, if you're going to find a joint venture partner or a lender, people in the community have more to lose than people outside that community. So I really do value meetups. That's why I started my own meetup up here in the Hamilton area prior to all these lockdowns. And that's why the first thing I did when I was in Florida was search for meetups, try and find one. And then when I found one, go to every single one I could.
I really appreciate that story, Andrew, because it seems like that was a pretty pivotal moment for you in learnings that you could take over into other projects and other aspects of your business. So was there anything that came directly after that you just applied, or any sorts of I guess impact that had on decisions immediately after and then beyond?
Well, when the Ohio thing sort of came crashing down in flames, and then I had the duplex I was trying to tear down and build, tear down a single and build a duplex in London, and got shot down there. When all that happened, and I had loss, and then I had a partnership that I had to extend for 4 years so that the guy could get his money back. When all that happened, I'm just like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to be a real estate investor anymore. I can't handle this business. And if it wasn't for my mother-in-law and a friend of mine that were just crushing it and just making $100,000 a deal, I might never have gotten back in. But I was watching them. I'm like, well, they're just making it look too easy. I have to get back into this. You fall off a bike, you got to get right back on that bike and find a way. So very few people who went through what I went through probably would have stuck with it. But I'm hoping, and I try and share these stories so that other people can internalize the pain of how much that sucks and not do it. If you learn from the story, you won't allow it to happen to you. And I really do think that's possible. I've contemplated that in my podcast for years. Can I stop people from making the mistakes that I made? Will they ever truly respect what could happen until it happens to them? And I actually think they can, if they can resonate with the story. So that's sort of, I know, tangent, but I think that it's really important. So for me, I'm really glad that I was able to get back in. I'm glad that I was able to surround myself with people that had overcome hardship and made it to really incredible places, because if they can do it, I can do it. And I've lived by that. Anytime in any business, if somebody else can do it, I can find a way to do it too. And I just say, okay, all I need to do is study what they're doing and copy it. And, not trying to rip them off, but, don't reinvent the wheel either.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that as well. I love that phrase, if they can do it, I can do it. And it definitely seems like that influence from the people surrounding you was a really big pivotal turning point for you, where you were able to see other people succeeding and growing and wanted to strive towards that as well. Now, did you have any other influences at that time, or any other mentors that really guided you along the way? Or were you always the type that really figured it out yourself just by virtue of seeing what others were doing?
Like I said, so I did have my mother-in-law, and she has been in my life since 2010, I guess. That was when I first met her, when I started dating Jordan, who's now my wife. And yeah, I met her probably a month or so after Jordan and I started dating. And, sure enough, Jordan had told me, she's like, well, you should speak with my mom, because she's a real estate investor, and, she does crazy things. And I just told Jordan, I'm like, I'm not sure what I want to do. I just finished the teaching contract. All I know is I kind of want to invest in real estate. I have no idea how I would do that. I don't know anything about it, but, and my family never did it, but I know I want to do it. And she's like, well, you need to talk to my mom. So I actually decided to go work for her mom so that I could be around her and learn. So I got my mortgage agent license so I could kind of sit in her office, and I ended up doing mortgages because that was related. And I ended up working with investors, and I learned a lot from the investors that I worked for. So, but I wouldn't call any of the clients I worked for mentors to me. I mean, I saw some interesting things, but it was really Carmen that just kind of, she showed me the attitude. She had this attitude of, no one's ever going to tell me I can't do something. And she always just does it no matter what. And she's done more than any investor I know. And, just probably getting close to I don't even know, but hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate in her portfolio, hundreds of millions. And so that's been very inspiring to me. And then my friend Carlo, who's been on my podcast a couple of times, he was really critical to me. He graduated from the same school, the same year as I did, and we met each other in 2010. He was a realtor. I was a mortgage agent at the time. I still have my license, but we're just like, hey, we should talk. We should stay in touch, and we should share. And we've always shared stuff from that day forward, all the way till now. And we both helped each other overcome roadblocks with construction and how do you do this? How do you do that? What are the restrictions here? And we'd always just brainstorm and talk to each other. How are we going to do that? Or how would we do that? We'd never partnered on anything, but we've always shared with each other and kind of brainstormed and masterminded together to grow. So those are the big ones. But I would say, no, I'm not a figure it out by myself kind of guy. But I am a won't quit kind of guy. I will find the answer. I will find the people that have the answer. So I guess maybe you could call that figuring out by myself, but no one ever does anything by themselves. It's all who you're asking and who gave you the answer.
Absolutely. Now, you obviously have created an incredible platform to share this message. And as you said, try and really teach others and vibe with stories that will potentially influence somebody to not go down the same path or not make the same mistakes that you have. So what inspired you to start the podcast or start creating those sorts of opportunities to inspire others to not fall down the same pathway?
You know what? I wasn't completely sure what I would get out of it, but I knew, the whole Gary Vee model of, just create content about that, what you love, and, the rest will figure itself out. Maybe one day you'll get paid just to talk. And I sort of had that goal in mind. One day people will just pay me to talk about this stuff, and who knows, maybe they will. But that was kind of where it started. And I just I like talking real estate. I always have. The last year's made it a little harder because I've quite frankly just not liked Ontario the way the market's looked. It hasn't, for me, for my style, I'm not very enthusiastic about what's been happening because it's just speculative at this point to me in so many markets. With where the cash flow is and how compressed the cap rates are, it just was, it's not fantastic as far as that goes. So yeah, that part's been a bit tough, but I mean, I'm still inspired, to help people. I just kind of have to adjust how I do it. So I don't pull my punches. So I will tell people, hey, I'm looking elsewhere. I think in Canada, great places to look are out west, but I've never invested out west or out east. I think that those are potentials. But it's just a little tougher for me to share my experience and say this still works now with what's happened in the last year, I would say. Sorry, I know that was long-winded. I'm giving you a lot of long-winded answers.
Oh, that's great. Getting you talking, it's a good thing. And for you then, like it really sounds like you've obviously just changed with what you see in front of you, and you very much go by your gut. Is there a certain problem that you see right now? There's an opportunity in the market that maybe you're just too busy or just don't really have the capacity right now to take on yourself?
I mean, opportunities in the Ontario market, I'm sure they're there. There's always opportunity everywhere. Like you can find a needle in a haystack if you're willing to look hard enough. So no matter what, there's always an opportunity, and don't ever let anyone tell you there isn't. I think that there's opportunities outside of Ontario that people are too busy. Am I too busy? Yeah, I mean, I think there's other reasons, but I think Alberta is, I have a little bit of FOMO about not investing in Alberta right now, but it's like, I'm focused on Florida. I like the political hedge of getting a little bit of real estate outside of Canada. But if I wasn't doing that, I'd probably be, buying real estate in Edmonton or something like that right now. So, there's only so many places I'm going to focus my energy in one time. But as I go, I mean, once I get a system up and running, now I can focus on the next system and get that one up and running.
Absolutely. And what draws you to the Edmonton market specifically, even though you're not necessarily investing in it yourself, but for maybe a young, inspired entrepreneur or investor, what do you see there as an opportunity?
Well, I know a lot of people are headed out that way right now. Mark Loeffler, I was talking to him. He just bought, I don't know, it was 10 plus units and like 88,000 a door. So price point versus cash flow. It would be the big thing. I think Alberta is sort of at its bottom or close to the bottom, whereas Ontario is close to the top. And I don't want to buy at the top. And it's not that I really care that much about what price I'm buying at, but the cash flow numbers need to make sense. I need to be okay with a 20% correction. If the values come down 20% and stay there for 20 years, am I okay with that? And the answer is no in Ontario in most cases. So that's why I'm not focusing energy there. Whereas in Alberta, you'd say, well, that's highly unlikely that would happen in the first place. The rents are already quite low compared to where they've been in the past. So it seems like we're at the bottom. With the price of oil climbing, it's likely that it's going to come back. But there's also infrastructure in Alberta. There's infrastructure in Calgary and Edmonton that's not going anywhere. And there's new companies that are going to come in there and set up shop because there's people living there. There's able-bodied people who can work. So that's my thought. So that's why I think that kind of a market is good. And you just look at the cost. How far does your dollar go? If you're a new immigrant to Canada, you can go to Toronto and, pay a ridiculous amount for 600 square feet, or you can go to Alberta and, pay the same amount for 3,500. So I think that's a natural choice for a lot of people. So I like to look at markets where I might be able to buy under the cost of construction or reconstruction if I find houses, especially if there's an economic driver in the area. There's employers, reason for people to come there. I really like that. I think New Brunswick's another opportunity, as I've mentioned, just because it's so cheap. You can still buy stuff less than cost of replacement. And if you can buy it at that price, and there's so many people immigrating to Canada and we have a housing crisis as it is, it's only a matter of time before these remote work agreements allow people to work entirely out of province. I think that the demand for those kind of markets that are cheaper, naturally people are just going to flock there because water always goes to the lowest point.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And one of the interesting things too right now, when we're filming this, is it's mid-May, and we've seen a lot of regulation changes regarding like interprovincial travel, etc. So given that you're really investing in the US, so very remotely, you've built up the relationships there. What do you foresee as the best approach there for maybe somebody who wants to invest remotely in some of these markets that have that upside potential, like New Brunswick or Alberta?
I think you got to plan to go spend some time in that place. I don't think there's a way around that. So I took advantage of the time I had in Florida. We wanted to escape the lockdown, and there were a number of reasons. So we took that time to learn the market. And I actually felt frustrated with myself. I'm like, I've been here for almost 3 months and I still haven't done anything. And at the end of the day, that was what it took for me to feel comfortable, to feel like I knew enough about the place, the people. I felt I had enough connections that I would be able to confidently move forward. So I think everyone, that's going to be different depending on the industry you're in or what you're trying to do. And I think you just got to do that. So if you want to invest out in Alberta, and if you're new, that's probably going to take you more time. You're going to have to go out there and spend some time. But if you're a seasoned investor and you've been investing for 20, 30 years, and you go to a new market, it's going to take you a lot less time. Maybe you can do it in a week. Maybe you can, hit up the market, look for a couple of key indicators that you look for in a building. It's this X distance from the nearest major employer, X distance from the nearest shopping center. Okay, fits my criteria, I'm buying it. There are some people who function that way. I'm not there yet. Especially with new construction in an entirely new city. The only city I've ever really invested in, other than that one in the States, which didn't go well, was London. And that's the only one I've been successful in. So I guess I just tentatively took my time a bit more to get feeling good. So there's no answer I can give into what's right, but I will definitely say that plan to spend time in the place you want to invest. So, maybe you can take some time off of work and go out to Alberta for a month and look around, rent a place for a month and just get a feel for the areas that you like. See if you can find an investor community, make connections with people who know this business, who have a reputation and have something to lose if they mislead you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think spending time in that place, whether or not you're planning on living there or investing there, I think is a great strategy. And just you can't replace that in-person interaction, right? Like you've experienced that with just those investor meetups and having quite a lot of benefit from being able to actually go out there, like have that gut feeling when you're shaking somebody's hand and actually connecting with a person on that level. I don't think you can replace that just with all of our Zoom meetings and technological advances. There's just something different about being in person, feeling it, and having that gut experience.
Yeah, I really like that. I like golf for that too. So if, when they open up golf courses, if they do in Ontario, last summer, great place to meet investors, talk real estate, talk shop. You got like 4 hours, 5 hours on the course. You really get to know people and learn what they're all about and have fun at the same time.
That's awesome. Well, we'll have to see you on the greens then. That's definitely the place where all of the fun chats happen.
Yeah, you play?
I don't, but I have definitely teed off a few times, just not successfully or well. But I'm gonna have to evolve that skill so I can
take a couple lessons.
See more on the greens.
That's something I did in Florida too while I was there. Just took a couple of lessons, start work on it a little bit to get a bit better. I'm still not shooting great, but I mean, you don't have to shoot fantastic to have a good time.
Fair enough. I will take that down and try that out once the courses open up. So last question that I have here before we wrap up, Andrew, is what's a problem that you're really trying to solve right now? So you've really swerved and evolved your business and just changed with the times, but what's the biggest problem that you're really taking on?
The big thing right now is just flexibility. Feeling like I'm set up to be invested in the area that I want to be investing in and have the flexibility to make a decision later. So it's no secret I don't pull my punches, that I greatly disagree with the way this has all been handled in Canada and Ontario very specifically, and it's concerning to me. And so I don't ever want to leave Canada. I like Canada. I've always wanted to be able to stay here. I mean, at least in the summer, maybe not in the winter, but the big challenge now is setting myself up so that I have the flexibility. I have the option. So I'm going to be applying for the E2 investor visa so that I would be able to stay in the US. And, then my wife and I have that ability. If we decide, hey, it's time, we'll head down there. If not, we'll just keep things rolling here in Canada. But I mean, having that flexibility to me is really invaluable. So that's probably the number one problem that I've been working on solving. So that's what's been so busy about the last 3 months, is just figuring out how to do that.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, I really appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and experience and just some stories of some problems that you've really overcome that have really launched you on this pathway to success and really evolved your investing skill set over time. So really appreciate you coming on today, Andrew. And before we wrap up here, where can people find you? What's the best place for someone to reach out and connect?
So if they want to check out the podcast, the best place or best thing to do is just go to any of the podcast platforms, including YouTube, and you can just search my name, Andrew Hines, and you will find it. And if you want to try and reach out to me, you can send me a message on either Instagram or Facebook at the Andrew Hines. I'm pretty good at getting to the messages that I get. I haven't been perfect, but I will do my best to get back to you if you send me a message.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thanks again for coming on to this episode of the Problems or Profits podcast, and look forward to seeing you as you endeavor into some new areas, new markets, and seeing what happens next for Andrew Hines.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Problems are what? Problems are profits!